Folks, welcome back. So I know a lot of you are finding the channel recently. You're just now watching the videos. You've just now subscribed. I know others of you have been around for a while, but I still get asked a lot of questions about how all of this came to be, how I got started in the Pokemon hobby, how Nomics got started here on YouTube, and, kind of the evolution over the last 9 years in the hobby, what's changed, what hasn't, what kind of things have I shifted over the years, mindset-wise, and, putting into practice. And so I thought we could go all the way back and talk about how I got back in the hobby, all the changes that have happened, how I've switched my strategy up over the years, the successes and failures that I've had, and hopefully give you guys some motivation, some confidence in what you're doing to reach your collecting goals, your investing goals, your business goals, your content goals, whatever it may be. 'Cause I'll tell you guys right now, I had zero help and I knew nobody. I didn't know a single person in the hobby. I didn't know a single person in content creation. I didn't have anyone, giving me connections on where to buy. I didn't have anyone in the, Pokemon sphere helping me out with my channel, putting me on their channel, helping me get views and sending all their friends my way and all their followers my way to kind of get me started. Knew nobody. Built this all brick by boring brick. Not only that, didn't come from any money. I don't have family money. I'm still not wealthy in terms of American standards, even, what I've built in this hobby and in life. And literally did this from scratch. And that's why I know that you can too, even in 2024. So let's go ahead and go back. Yes, this is going to be a longer video. I know you guys like that. So throw in the ear pods if you're at work, because I know you're not working anyway. Get the popcorn and soda out. If it's morning, pour yourself a coffee and sit back, relax, and listen. And hopefully this does help you guys out with whatever part of the journey you are on, because I promise, it doesn't matter if you just started, if you've been in 1 or 2 years, you've been in 5 years, you've been in as long as me, there's going to be something in here that you're going to either sit back and say, oh yeah, I didn't think of that, or it's going to help, or it's going to just get you to at least, kind of get outside your mindset and look at things a little differently based on the experiences and the things I've went through. So let's go ahead and get started. First up, I was born in 1990, so yes, I did go through the original 1999 boom. And yes, I watched the anime every single morning, had all the games for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, N64 and GameCube. I was a complete Pokemaniac, right? I was the guy that was irritating in the group of friends, couldn't stop talking about Pokemon, stayed in the hobby longer than a lot of my friends, where I eventually got out in the 2001, 2002 range, where a lot of people did, when we were starting to grow up, get into middle school, all that good stuff. And so, it wasn't until way later in life, in 2015, where I was 25 years old, and I didn't even find the hobby again because of Pokemon cards. I actually had just sold my first business. It was a lawn care landscaping company, and I had got a pretty big check, and I was taking some time off work. And I was just hanging out and enjoying life for a little while, and I was sitting at home, and I was thinking, you know what? I'd really like to play some of those old games I had when I was a kid, those old game systems. And, at this time, I don't know where everything was, buried at my parents' house, or, got sold off in garage sales, got lost with moves. I don't know. But I didn't have any of my old game systems. And so I went on eBay and I started to buy them. And I started to buy Nintendo, NES, and Sega Genesis, and Super Nintendo, and N64, and GameCube, and PlayStation 1, and PlayStation 2. And then I got a Game Boy and a Game Boy Advance. And I kind of went crazy. And I kind of collected / wanted to buy the systems to play. And so I'm sitting there with all these systems, hooking them up, playing them all. And I got to N64. And I plugged in, it was either Pokemon Stadium or Pokemon Snap. And it clicked in my brain. Oh yeah, what about Pokemon cards? That's a huge nostalgia kick. And so you know what I did? I hopped on eBay. I found someone selling the original base set, Jungle and Fossil, and I bought it. Now, there was nothing about condition back then, at least from what I remember. I bought the collection. I don't even think I looked at the condition of the cards. They weren't completely chewed up, but I'm sure there was a lot of whiting and all that on them. And so bought the sets, got them home, was flipping through the binders, loved it. I forget what I even paid. I think it was maybe $100 for all of them. It was nothing. I could be wrong about that, but it was very cheap. And so I'm looking at all the cards, and I go back and look later. By the way, there's like shadowless cards mixed in. There's base set 2 cards in the base set. There's first edition cards mixed in the jungle and fossil. Like, everything was so unoptimized, guys. Even the sellers didn't know what they were selling. I didn't know what I was buying. It wasn't a major market back then, right? It was just kind of like old stuff from your childhood trying to sell on eBay. And so this is another big point. That tells you I got in the hobby as a true collector, baby. I was part of the True Collector Club. I literally spent my money with zero thought process of any financial value or gain or ever getting that money back. It was the same as going and buying a new pair of shoes or going out to eat or going to a concert. I literally just blew the money on something that I wanted. So just remember that. I was a true collector at one point before I lost my innocence. And so from there, I kind of caught the bug a little bit again. And I got online and I was looking if there was any card shops still around. I'm like, do card shops still exist in 2015? Is that a thing? And so I got online and there was still a card shop near me. And shout out to Collector Store. Still around today. It's still the card shop I go to this day. And I looked them up. I went in one day and it was just like back in the 90s, man. I mean, they still had all the display cases. They still had a first edition base set Charizard in the case. They had a first edition Blue Eyes White Dragon in the case. And they had base, jungle, and fossil booster packs. They ranged from like $10, $12, $15, $20 at the time. Very cheap. And so you're going to love this too. So I bought one of each artwork of every pack, base, jungle, and fossil. And I think I even bought like a base set theme deck. Not the starter deck, but one of the theme decks. And took it all home, ready for this, and kept it sealed, baby. So even back then, I was a sealed collector. I know a lot of people think, oh, the only reason people keep this stuff sealed is they're trying to invest in it. They're worried about the financial value. Nope. I didn't know what Pokemon investing was. I didn't have any thoughts of selling it again in the future for a profit or even to get my money back. I was just spending money on things I wanted to collect. And so even back then, yes, sealed collectors existed. I was one of them, even to this day. If there was no financial value or investment value attached to it, I would always rather have the sealed box over the cards inside. Just the way I am. I know it blows some people's minds, but a sealed base set box means more to me than a Charizard PSA 10. Just the way it is. But yeah, so I kept all of it sealed, and then I really started to catch the bug again. And I got on eBay, and I started to spend way too much money. I bought all of the pack arts for all of the old sets. So I had base set, jungle, fossil. I had base 2, Team Rocket, Gym Challenge, Gym Heroes. I had one of each pack art, right, for display. And then I got into the theme decks, and I wanted to buy one of every theme deck sealed. And some of those were hard to find, like Tempest and Thunderstorm, and some of the Gym Heroes ones at the time. They were a little hard to find. But I eventually completed all of the theme decks. Yes, the base set and the Shadowless variant. You know, and then from there, I just started to kind of venture out, and I was scrolling around online, learning more, like finding all these new things that used to be released back then. And so I bought out the original Black Star promo sets, and I started to complete the sets of base 2 and Team Rocket, Gym Challenge, Gym Heroes. Again, I was a Gen 1 kid, so I stuck with Gen 1 pretty much. And then I started to find these really crazy things like demo packs. I was like, oh, this whole demo pack. And guys, if you want to know anything about a worthless sealed product, go search a demo pack and look what's inside it. It's literally nothing but commons and uncommons. And even back then, the thing even went for hundreds of dollars. I don't know what it's worth now. I haven't checked. But I was buying a demo pack and then Southern Islands binder. I found Trainer Deck A and B, but I never bought those because they were so expensive even back then. And just all that kind of stuff. I was just learning about all these old things in the hobby. And so this was now into 2016 time. I would say probably closer to when Pokemon Go was out. The cell phone game was a worldwide phenomenon, maybe a little before Evolutions. And a friend of mine had come over to my house because him and his girlfriend at the time, they wanted to see our new house that we just built. And so they were over and we were all talking, them, me and my wife. And, we were showing them the house. And then my wife and his girlfriend were talking. And so I said, hey, come here, man. I walked him back to my bedroom and pulled out the plastic tubs where I had everything stored. And I'm like, you gotta check this out. And I started showing him everything. And his eyes lit up like, dude, there's no way you kept all this from when you were a kid. How did you never open it? And I'm like, whoa. I'm not that much of a visionary, dude. Chill out. I've been buying it. Where have you found it? I'm like, well, some in a card shop, the rest on eBay. I've just been searching around. It's been like a year now, man. He's like, this is crazy. Like, we spent like probably 30 minutes going through everything and just talking about it. And so they went home that night. Like a day or two later, he calls me up. So listen, I'm on eBay. I'm looking for these base set packs. How much did you say you paid? I'm like, like $20 or something. He's like, dude, they're all like $35, $40, $45 everywhere I look. And I'm just like, have you used eBay before? I'm like, I'll get on eBay, I'll help you out. So I get on eBay, I'm on the phone with them, and I'm scrolling, lowest list, I'm looking at last solds. Sure enough, they're like double the price of what I paid for them just a year before. And so we're talking, and all of a sudden it clicked. And that's the moment I was no longer just a collector, and I lost my innocence in the hobby, and I started to think about the dollars and cents, and I started to think about the finances. I still don't think I was really an investor at that time. I was more like a collector looking for gained value, but that was the time when everything changed, and we finally realized, wait a second. Everyone else that we grew up with, we were all doing the same thing. That's the thing about the 90s, guys, and the early 2000s. We didn't have social media, right? We eventually had AOL Instant Messenger and then MySpace, but it wasn't like today where everyone was so fractured in all the different communities they're involved in. Back then, everyone pretty much did the same thing. Everyone watched Saturday morning cartoons. Everyone saw the same cartoons. Everyone liked the same stuff. And so everyone liked Pokemon. And so we're like, wait a second. A lot of people our age are going to do the same thing. They're going to eventually get hit with nostalgia. They're going to go back. They're going to have adult money because they're all working full-time jobs now. And they're going to want to buy back the stuff they had as a kid. And that was the day we started to buy things in hopes of gaining future value and selling for a profit. That was the day everything changed. And so that was our mindset, that people are going to want to go collect their childhood again. So that's what we started to do. We started to buy up as much as we could. Now, at this time, I hadn't been working for like a year, right? I took a year off. I've talked about this before. I took a year off after I sold my first company. And so this was a time when money was starting to, get a little lower, and I was having to start thinking about getting a job and or starting a new business, which I did. And so I didn't have all the money to blow. Again, I didn't come from money. I didn't have unlimited money. And so we really started to get into flipping. And that's how we really funded most of our collection and investment. And so I would say this is around the time of Evolutions getting released, like late 2016, early 2017. I had already been on YouTube. I had already been doing some studying. I've been watching some pack breakers just for fun, like Unlisted Leaf and Darium's Pokemon, and there's Max Mofo, Primetime Pokemon. Leonhardt was little at the time, guys. You know Leonhardt now, he was like 20, 30,000 subscribers. He was a nobody at the time. And so, I was watching that stuff, and then I found a channel around that time called S.M. Pratt, baby. You know him. And Scott's, he's an OG. He's been around just as long, if not longer, than anybody. Very knowledgeable, even though I don't agree with all of his takes. I had some problems on his platforms. I still give Scott a ton of credit because I learned a ton from him and his channel. And also, I learned a ton from being on E4 and just, kind of asking a lot of questions back then, reading tons and tons of things people have put out and all the research people had done. And it was kind of a community where there were a bunch of real, hardcore collectors and investors all in one spot, all knowledgeable, kind of sharing their knowledge. And so I learned a lot during that time. So I used that knowledge in the flipping game. And so back then, in that market, it was more about knowledge, right? Right here in my garage, right? Knowledge. Ty Lopez. It was a lot more about knowledge than it was speed. The market nowadays, I'll be honest with you guys, I don't even like the market nowadays. It's this weird, Speedy Gonzalez market. You gotta get the cards immediately, rush grade them, and then flip them immediately on the market. Or you gotta go ahead and run to Scams Club, run to Costco, run to Dollar General. You gotta get the stuff on the shelf. Hurry! Oh, Pokemon Center released a new product. They did a new drop. You gotta buy it. They restocked it. You gotta buy it. It's such a weird market now. That wasn't a thing back then. It was a much slower market. It was a more methodical market where people with the most knowledge actually could outperform. And so one of the early flips we did when I'm learning all this stuff is a base set starter deck case display. And if you guys don't know, there's a few variants, but the two main ones are the Unlimited and the Shadowless variant. The Shadowless has all energy cards on back, where the base set has a bunch of different cards. Now, there are variants where the shadowless ones, or the energy ones don't have shadowless cards inside. Depends if they open from the top, open from the side. If they have a gold strip, I'm not going to get into all that good stuff, right? But everything, screamed this was a shadowless case on the market, right? And they had one country code on the bottom and all that good stuff. And it was listed for $400, where at the time, that's what these cost, about 40 to 60 bucks. A case was about 8 with 8 displays, and so it was about $400. And we saw this, and we talked about it, me and my friend, and I made the play. And so I paid $400 for this display case. I went on E4 and other places, and I just copy and pasted all of this research done about why it was shadowless. And I posted all that in the description, and I listed it, and I let it sit, and I posted it for $4,000. So someone finally came along, and they wanted to buy it, and we negotiated, and I sold that display for $2,400. So literally, it made a $2,000 flip just by knowing more than the guy selling it. And there were tons of instances back then you could do that. People selling, shadowless packs with the tradable game cards and not understanding they weren't unlimited. You could buy those, relist them as shadowless, make money on that. And there were just tons of little nuances you could play in the market back then where people literally just didn't know what they had, like what printing they had, what they didn't know about where the shadowless was just getting new. Guys, back then, people didn't even know, a lot of them didn't even know you could weigh packs. Weighing packs was a thing on the hollows. This was a very unoptimized market still at this point. And so, we were just kind of making any play we could make based on having more knowledge, right? Really started to buy out collections, any type of huge collection or lot, break it down, sell off all the stuff that wasn't in good shape or we didn't want, wasn't really worth that much, auction that back off, sell it back off. Keep the good cards, got into card grading around this time, around 2017 time, got into card grading, started to, grade the good cards, grade the hollows, and then sell off a lot of them, kept some after we were already in the profit. And so we started doing some of that. Got into buyouts around this time where the kind of buyouts I did was structured around finding disparities between PSA 9 and PSA 10s to where the 10 was a low pop going for $4,000 and the PSA 9s were still stuck at $200. And I'm thinking in my head, well, surely people are willing to pay more than $200 if the 10's $4,000, right? If they're not going to buy the 10, they're going to go for the 9. Well, they're going to pay more than $200, right? So I'd buy out all the 9s, relist it at $500. And then even if people would undercut you, they would undercut you at the new price point. They'd be like, okay, $495, $490. And so then you could undercut them at $480. Eventually they started selling and started making, just double my money on a lot of the cards and made a few of those buyout type plays. And they worked relatively well. Just took a little time. And so that was going on. We got into opening boxes. So price point wise, if you guys were wondering about price points, when I got back in the hobby 2015, a base set booster box was $800. First edition Fossil, first edition Jungle, $400 or $500. The base set first edition box was $10K. It was listed by Collector's Cash. It sat on the market. It was $10K or best offer. No one was buying it, so really it was worth less than $10K. And everything was just really, really cheap, right? I eventually bought one of those first edition base set Charizards at my local card shop. It was only $750. So it ended up being a PSA 6 condition, so not too bad. And so that was just kind of the market we were playing in. But anyway, by the time, it was 2017, 18, I forget exact time frames on this, but we started opening first edition vintage boxes because it was actually, you could actually profit by opening them. And what I mean is, obviously pack weighing became more of a thing. We went and got a little scale. Actually, I don't smoke or anything, but I actually went to a weed shop to buy a scale that went down to the grams because I needed it for Pokemon packs. So walked into this weed shop, bought a scale, and we started cracking first edition Fossil boxes. Paid $1,500 for them at the time. So by that time, again, only a year or two later, they had already went from $400 or $500. Now they were $1,500, $2,000 in a couple years. Base set booster boxes were now $2,000. And so the market was moving fast at this time. People think it was all about the pandemic. Oh no, 2015 up to 17, 18 time, there was a lot of movement, especially in the sealed and the single slab market. It was pretty substantial. But so we were opening boxes, weighing all the packs, selling off the 24 light packs, opening up the 12 heavies, grading all the hollows, selling off the common uncommons and lots of complete common uncommon sets, whatever. And when all you had to do is pull a few good hollows, right? Grade a few 10s and you can make profit. And so we'd get the cards back, sell off everything we could to recoup all the money, keep whatever we could, whether it be 1, 2, or 3 cards out of each sale, and then repeat it. Buy another box, open it, do the same process. And so we did a little bit of that, and it was just a kind of culmination of all this stuff. Anything and everything I could do to make a buck in the hobby, and then just put that money right back into my long-term investment or collection at the time. That was all I was trying to do, right? Because I couldn't afford to continue to put my own money in the hobby again and again and again. So it was all about flipping at that time. And so it was also around this time where I started to really look into modern. And I talked to my friend about it. I'm like, listen, I understand all of us are wanting to go for vintage, but is there not going to come a day in the future where all of these kids now that are getting in because of their parents, people like us, are not going to want to go collect the things they grew up with? Especially this Evolutions. As base set booster box is now 2,000 plus, and if that keeps going up and up and up, eventually people are going to say, I'm just going to open Evolutions because it's much cheaper. And by the way, guys, my relationship with Evolutions, that was like one of my favorite sets to open ever. And that's crazy to some people to say because a lot of people never liked that set. I opened more Evolutions product than any other product ever. I probably opened over 100 boxes of Evolutions in my time. There were nights where I went through a whole case of Evolutions just ripping. And it was cool back then because code cards, right? The whole online TCG, that was still newer. And so code cards were worth a whole lot of money. You could actually make a good amount back from code cards alone. And then all you had to do was pull like a couple big hits, like a Charizard Holo and a Charizard Full Art. That basically puts you in profit for the box, and everything else was free. And so you could keep just ripping boxes, selling off the singles, ripping more boxes, selling off the singles, and you could, it didn't cost much money. You could actually make some money sometimes. And so I was just going through Evolutions like crazy every time I could. And so opened a ton of Evolutions, and I started thinking, wait, people are going to want to open this someday when everything else is too expensive or the kids want to come back and open it. And so started to put away modern product. And so it wasn't until later on when I started to do that though, like 2017 or something. And so I had not collected any of the XY boxes, right? And you could say, well, yeah, but XY was still cheap. It was for the most part. However, Flashfire was $350 when I bought it. And looking back, guys, that sounds really cheap. That was insanely high. Remember, when I got back in the hobby, that was almost the price of a first edition Jungle or first edition Fossil box. Now, just a few years later, a couple years later, Flashfire was $350. And I'm like, this is crazy, right? Am I really going to pay this much for a modern booster box? Modern costs like $90, $100. That's ridiculous, right? And so I did it. I wanted to collect one of every box. And so I had every single XY box at the time. And then I started moving to Sun and Moon, and every set that was released, I would just buy one of every box. And I started to put away, like, anytime I could find, like, an extra box to put away, or I found a sale, I put that away. Evolutions was the first case that I bought ever. So I bought a case of Evolutions, which was crazy. It's like, oh my gosh, a case! It was so cool, right? I'm sure everyone remembers their first case. Again, back then, this wasn't, like, a major thing, right? It wasn't, like, accepted to buy cases of modern. Modern product was not proven yet. And so it wasn't like this thing where everyone was confident. It was like a whole new world, like, whoa, you're going to put like real money into modern? Really? Like, yeah, I'm going for it. And so I started to buy cases of Evolutions, and then, from there, it kind of snowballed and started to buy more. Like, it was again, money from flips and things like that. I bought a lot of Generations products. I was like, Anniversary's got to be a good product. I'm going to buy some Anniversary. And then moved on to Sun and Moon. When Burning Shadows came out, I picked up a case of Burning Shadows. And then when they ran a sale, I picked up another case of Burning Shadows. I was still picking up Evolutions every time I could. Because back then, guys, eBay would always run these eBay Bucks promotions where they would give you like 10% back. So like with eBay Bucks, sometimes the Evolution cases were down to like $480, and then you put like eBay Bucks, you could get it like under $450. It was wild. Like some of these Evolutions cases I bought were like $450 or less cases. So like, I would say my average price because at one point I got up to 10 Evolutions cases, but my average price was somewhere in the 80s, but some of those cases I got under $80. Some I paid over 90 a box, whatever it is on average, but it was very cheap. And so I just kept picking it up. So I'm like, I love opening this stuff. There's no way no one else is ever going to love opening this. So that was kind of my idea. But, and as time progressed, I just kept doing that. I was more of a set picker back then, and then like a deal picker. So when things, went on real big sales, or I thought it was a good set, I'd pick it up. So, like Shining Legends was like trash at the time. No one wanted it. So I was picking up those at like clearance, tons of ETBs, tons of UPCs, super premium collections back then. And then like Unified Minds was another set that I went into pretty heavy. I think I bought a couple cases of that. And, I was still buying one of every box of Sun and Moon. And like when there was a sale or when I found another one, I'd buy a second box or a third box. But it wasn't like I had like mountains of boxes and mountains of sealed products. A lot of the time and attention was still going to vintage because I was still a big believer in vintage. I would say like back then, I was like 90-10 split. I was like 90% vintage, 10% modern, right? Like my interaction with modern was very few of the singles. I was trying to pick up sealed product when I had extra money, but a lot of the money was still being diverted to vintage. Like at that time, I was picking up like, base set booster box. I had a first edition Jungle, a first edition Fossil, a base set 2, a first ed Team Rocket, first ed Gym Challenge, first ed Gym Heroes. And I never quite I was getting to the point where I was getting into Neo, but that was like 2019-20 time, and prices had already started to rise. Pandemic was starting to get in full effect, and so I just kind of ran out of time type thing. If the pandemic had never happened, I would probably still have everything, and I still would have been building my sealed box position, but we'll talk about that in a second. But so that's kind of where I was pre-pandemic, right? There was already success in the hobby. I was already making money buying and selling. Me and my friend had already started to invest. We had already seen gains on a lot of the vintage items, the cards and the sealed products. And even the modern products were already starting to see some gain, like Phantom Force was already starting to move XY base. And so when people tell you the story about the pandemic's the only reason this hobby's here, it's a lie, right? It jump-started things to new heights, but there was already a lot of success and a lot of price appreciation before any of that happened. Like 2016 to 2020, that was still an amazingly good time in the hobby if you had got in, because a lot of things were moving quite a bit. It doesn't seem like a huge dollar amount move, but you gotta remember, a base set box was $800 in 2015. By the time the pandemic hit, it was like $4,000, right? So, I mean, that thing over 4x'd in literally a course of like 5 years. And so a lot of stuff had been moving quite a bit. And same thing with PSA slabs and singles and all that good stuff. Even the theme decks, my theme decks had risen a lot. And so anyway, that was kind of where I was at in the hobby. Now, pandemic hit, 2020, 2021, Logan Paul, free money from the government, everyone stuck at home. Everything went to the moon. Now, at this time, I had only put in, over the course of those years, if I had to guess, because I'm just guessing, probably 20 to 30 grand of my own money. Everything else was built by flips. Everything else was built by flipping, taking the profit and buying, or saving things out of the collections or the buys that I made, putting them away and moving on, right? And just not taking a profit, breaking even, and then putting that capital back into another flip. So that's how I amassed my entire Pokemon position up to that point, was literally buying and selling, flipping, and I put in maybe 20 to 30 grand of my own money. But again, that's over the course of like 5 years. So it's not a ton of money, guys. Maybe like 4 or 5 grand, 6 grand a year, right? It's not crazy. And so at that point, everything went to the moon seemingly overnight. And all of a sudden, all of the stuff I had in my closet was now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And at that point, again, middle class kid, didn't come from money, didn't have money, had debt. I made the decision it was irresponsible for me to hold that stuff. It was irresponsible at that point to hold that. And my friend I was collecting and investing with, he agreed. He was doing the same thing. We both made a decision during that time to sell literally everything we had in Pokemon. Everything. I kept maybe like 5% or less just because I wanted some stuff to remember it by, some stuff in my collection, which I eventually probably sold some of that later on anyway, but sold out of everything in the course of a few months. And some of it got close to the top, some of it didn't quite catch the top, some of it was a little after the top, but literally sold everything near the tops in the pandemic times. To give you like an idea, like, the base set, all the first edition Gen 1 boxes, they were all in like the high teens to 20s, $1,000, right? So boxes that I paid like $1,500, $2,000 for were now worth like $18,000, $20,000, $25,000. Yes, that's real. And so, as you can imagine, I'm freaking out. I'm thinking I hit the jackpot. I'm thinking I'm rich, right? So, go through the process of starting to sell everything, and it's obviously nerve-wracking, selling through eBay, shipping all this stuff out, and I was really getting nervous. He had some vintage boxes. We were all nervous about selling, some of that stuff because it wasn't like slabs or singles or it was sealed. I didn't want to get scammed. I had already sold all my modern boxes, so I had already sold all my XY, Sun and Moon boxes and cases. I kept like an Evolutions and some other stuff like for collection, but I sold everything else. And so I was reaching out to people. I reached out to like Rusty at TCA Gaming. I reached out to some other people in the community. I think I even reached out to like Pokemon Radar at the time. I was trying to like sell off the higher end stuff. And I eventually was talking to my local card shop, Player Store again, and those guys turned me on to a contact they had at Troll and Toad. And I got their number. And so started to text them back and forth, send them all the pictures, and worked a deal with Troll and Toad for less. It was less than market. I took a little less, but it was risk-free. So me and a friend of mine loaded up the car with the vintage boxes, took a road trip to Troll and Toad in Kentucky. It was this warehouse in the middle of nowhere. It was not this like nice commercial location. It was kind of sketchy, to be honest with you. They shared the space with like another company, like some kind of packing company, like for food. It was a weird situation, but we walked in like, is this Troll and Toad? And they're like, oh yeah, right here. And I'm just like, okay, because we got our boxes in the car. I wanted to make sure I was in the right place because like there was people outside like smoking, looking sketchy, and we're just like, I don't really want to get jumped with all this money in my hand, so let's go in and make sure first. And like my friend, he even had his firearm with him. He's like, dude, you think I should like draw this? Like, should I make sure no one messes with it? I'm like, let's just wait a second, dude. Let's go in and see what's happening. And it ended up being safe. Everything was good. But it was definitely a weird situation. I will say that. I was out in the middle of nowhere. It was strange. But went into Troll and Toad, put all the boxes out on the table. The guy came in, inspected everything. And here's the weird part about it. They inspected everything for like half a second, it felt like. Like, they did not put time in looking at these boxes. It was literally, like, here, it was like this. It was like, okay, that looks good. And then moved on to the next box. And, like, that was it. Like, and so, looked at all the boxes really quick, and then said, like, okay, so wire transfer. And so they wire transferred all the money in our account. We sat there and waited till it got there. Boom, all the money showed up. Shook hands, and that was it. Done deal. And so that was one of like the coolest feelings ever, is seeing like that amount of money just show up in your account all at once and just be like, man, I paid very little, if anything, for most of these boxes because I either paid little for them or I made the money by flipping profits and I bought them with those profits. I never put my own money into this, and now all of a sudden it's life-changing money. And so got all the money. Coming down from the high after that, driving home, it was crazy, man. It was an experience I'll never forget. And so anyway, well, Alex, what'd you do with all the money? Where's all that cool stuff? Yeah, I didn't put it back into Pokemon. I'll be honest with you. I did real life stuff with it, right? So we paid off our cars, paid off our student loans, decorated our whole house, like updated our house, put on a deck, put on a privacy fence, hot tub, all that good stuff, right? All that stuff you think about doing. And then the money that was left, right, I put into other investments in the stock market at the time, because at the time I was just not convinced on Pokemon anymore. I was like, this is like a crazy bubble. This is going to burst. It's going to be bad. And so that's where all the money went. Now, people always ask, Alex, do you regret it now? Absolutely not. And it's not just because a lot of the vintage stuff I sold is still down. I still got way more for it back then, 3 years ago, than it's worth now. But because a lot of the modern stuff's actually worth as much or more now, especially Team Up, right? And so it has nothing to do with that. I don't regret it because it changed our life. It changed our lifestyle. We got out of all of our consumer debt. We have no debt to our name because of that. We got to do all the updates on our house, our bathrooms, our kitchen, like our flooring, a deck, fence, like hot tub, like, we took a nice vacation. Like it changed our entire living situation from Pokemon. And then obviously it helped jumpstart, my investments in the stock market because of that. And so it was an experience that I would never trade. And I would love to have all that stuff, but what it did for me and my wife's life, I would never trade and take back, right? I wouldn't want all that stuff back and still be like maybe possibly in debt and worrying about this and that and stressed, because I haven't had really any stress since because of that. And so now, coming after the pandemic, I took a break from the hobby. I stepped away for months and I observed, because I was right. And things did blow up and absolutely get crushed and come down like a ton of bricks. And I observed what was happening during the crash. And I was right to an extent. And this is where everything changed. This is where you saw Nostalgia Nomics really be born. okay? Everything changed, because up until this point, I was in total agreement with a lot of the people all across the investing space, because at this time, a lot of other Pokemon investing channels popped up. They had similar views to SM Pratt and a lot of the guys on E4, and the whole older, rare, minter better, vintage king mindset. All this modern stuff is new and it's trash, it's overprinted, it won't be loved, because other hobbies and other collectibles, everyone goes to the original, all that good stuff. And so I was 100% agreement. I was on board, I was part of the gang. And I observed the market after everything blew up. And vintage sealed product took major hits. I mean, dropped, you guys know the story, right? Dropped 50+% on a lot of that stuff. And the slabs and singles followed. Those had massive drops, right? 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% drops on some of that stuff from the highs. And I was looking at modern. And the singles and the slabs, they were coming down the same way. They were all dropping. But the sealed product was holding up better than the vintage product, and better than the singles, and better than the slabs, and better than the older, rarer, minter better cards. And I was observing this and I was saying, wait a second. Why is this modern stuff only dropping 20, 30, maybe 40% when everything else is dropping more? And then I saw the modern start to stabilize. And I saw all the new modern products start to be sold at like higher prices than ever before. And it was selling out. And it was still doing extremely good. And I'm sitting here like, and this is like early Sword and Shield time. And I'm looking around and I'm just like, I think we're wrong. I think all of us are wrong. I think this modern stuff is where your investment money should be put. I think this stuff is going to outperform all this other stuff. And not only that, it's safer. We just saw people lose thousands of dollars trying to buy these $10,000 cars, and now they're worth $5,000. I'm like, we didn't see any of these modern boxes go from 100 to 50. We didn't see that happen ever, not once. And so I'm like, that's what I'm doing. I'm getting back in the hobby from ground zero, a fresh start, and I'm going to be a modern sealed investor. And, obviously I've been watching Rudy for years, and I've been, obviously being entertained by Rudy, Alpha Investments, and I finally, understood. I completely was bought in now. I had already been investing in modern, but at this point, I 100% bought in, and I realized this is what it's all about. This is where the money's going to be made. And that was, I would say, when Nomics was born. And I started, talking about this all over, internet forums, all over YouTube channels. I really started to push this point, and it got laughed at and got ridiculed and all the stuff you would expect at the time. Because right now, again, anyone new to the hobby now, you're looking around, you're like, Alex, everyone talks about modern investing. It's so accepted. If you don't talk about it, you're crazy. No. Back then, it was not accepted. You were seen as like a newbie. You were seen as like you're not deep enough in the hobby. Anyone who truly wants to be a real collector, a serious collector, serious investor, then you'll start to get back into vintage, the older rare elements are better, the trophy cards, the Japanese exclusive promos, this release, that release, historical significance to the hobby. This is where you make it to after your entry level at a modern. And I'm like, no, guys, I've already been there. I've already been down that rabbit hole. I know all that stuff, right? I get it, but I also know this, and I also understand markets. I understand how this whole, momentum works. I see the numbers. I see the data. The data tells me this is actually doing better than that. But people didn't want to hear that. They just wrote it off as, well, yeah, it's all manipulated right now. It's overprinted. Once all this crazy demand falls off, this will be the stuff that will be tried and true. Modern's all going to go to zero or whatever. And I just, I would, and I probably took maybe the arguments and the debates a little too far, and so I started to get banned from platforms, banned from channels, things like that. And so at this point, I was like, screw it. I'll make my own channel, and I'm going to put out the information, I'm going to show all the data, and I'm going to show that all these, kind of, I guess, pillars of the hobby, that although they're very knowledgeable, they know way more than me still, they're wrong. They're wrong about the investability aspect. They're wrong about those things being better places to park your money. They're not safer, right? They're not the better option. They're not going to perform as well. And so I started to make videos on it. And as you can imagine, I got tons of heat. I took more hate in that first year on YouTube than I've had since. It was crazy. I mean, I was getting, hate from every which direction, talking this favorably of modern sealed, over traditional investing, like, the stock market and real estate, over vintage investing, and it was crazy times, right? And so then I started to work up to where I had some followers and I had some subscribers, I had some views, and started to reach out and work my way onto other people's channels and have these debates. And I debated other creators about their positions versus my positions, and the debates got heated, and people asked, do I regret the way I acted? And some of the things, maybe I could have toned it down a little bit, but I always tried to keep it on the issue at hand, on showing the other way to people. And, some people took it more personal, and, it's why, kind of made some enemies in the hobby, and why some of those people are still enemies to me to this day or dislike me. I've reconciled with a lot of people, and a lot of people I'm friendly with now, but there's still some out there that dislike me because of those times. But, yeah, I mean, it was all just based on attacking the issues, not the person, but the issues at hand of showing that, hey, this vintage stuff, this older rare mints are better, this expensive stuff, it's not less risky. It's 100% not less risky. What's less risky is buying a modern box at $90 to $100, because those have never once dropped in 50%, where we've just seen all of this stuff drop in more than 50% from the highs. And now we're starting to see this stuff go stagnant, where all the modern stuff has started to recover now a year later. And I'm just like, am I in the twilight zone? Why am I the only person saying this? And there were some other people, but it was very frowned upon back then. The main investing space in Pokemon was still dominated by the other viewpoint. And then the other thing I wanted to do with the channel was make it more of a digestible, entertaining format that people would actually watch. Because again, I still say this to this day. If you can't get the butts in the seats, then it really doesn't matter what you're saying. So that's why, yes, I do play around with funny thumbnails and funny titles, and people call it clickbaity. But I give value in the videos, and if I don't get people to click on the video, then it doesn't matter what I'm saying. And so that's why I made the investing content I did. It was shorter form, 10, 15, 20 minutes. It wasn't these long drawn out live streams or these long 1 hour, monotone videos that was kind of dominating the space at the time. And I wanted to make it really easy, digestible, give visuals of actual numbers and data so people could actually see for themselves, watch the videos and then go and do and put it into practice. And that was kind of the whole genesis of Nostalgia Nomics and the whole brand that built here. And, that's kind of what it's always been since day one. I have stayed consistent since day one. My views, my opinions have never changed. This channel's never changed. There's been evolutions, whether it be with booster boxes or ETBs or when to buy, when to sell. There's been evolutions that have happened over the years still since I've been on YouTube. But the main point's always been the same, is that modern sealed investing is one of the safest places to put your money in the hobby. It's one of the most proven now, and it's had the best track record of consistent gains and some of the most gains in the hobby. And so, that's what I continue to do to this day. I continue to up my positions as I get more and more confident and believe in it more and more. And as I, get more and more net worth in the hobby, I feel, more okay with taking more and more risks. But that's how I did it, guys. Again, I didn't have any connections. I know a lot of people get in this hobby, they're worried about their connections they have. Alex, where do I get the cheapest product? Guys, you don't need connections. You don't need distribution. You don't need to be hooked up with a store or a distribution person. Guys, Safari Zone still pre-releases stuff at $89.99, $94.99 a box, right? Go buy it. That's basically the same, if not better, than what distributors are giving to stores for, right? You don't need to have connections to make content. I knew nobody. I started out my channel by clicking record and talking to a camera. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anyone to give me a shout out. I didn't have friends in the hobby to share my stuff with their followers, any of that stuff, right? I just built it from the ground up. And, so I think that's kind of the biggest misconception, is you need connections to start in this whole collecting, investing, business, content space. You don't. If you got what it takes, you're going to do well. And that's why you see people like, Mr. Beast or, Jake Paul, they'll try to put their friends on or their family members on, and they end up fizzling out and never making it anywhere, because you can't just give the skill to somebody, right? You can't make someone's career. That's why you see second and third generation family businesses go bankrupt, is because just because that person got handed a successful business doesn't mean they can run the successful business, right? So it's more important that you learn the skills and you can, get better at collecting or investing or running your business or making content for yourself than worrying about making the right connections to prop you up. So that's kind of my advice to everyone is you can do this, right? I built this from the ground up. A lot of people built their businesses from the ground up, and you can do it too. And so that's kind of my experience in the last 9 years of this hobby. Went through a lot of ups and downs, went through a lot of twists and turns, and I went through evolutions of how I saw things. But that's kind of what brought me to where I am today. There was a very real shift that happened in the market. in 2020, 2021, where people became more trusting of buying modern booster boxes, and they became more attractive, and they held up better in times of downturns, and they've been a safer place. They've seen less downturns when there were downturns in the market. And they're much more accessible. You don't have to go like shopping around trying to find these auctions of cards that are never listed. They're widely available, so you don't have to worry about there not being enough supply out there to put the amount of capital to work that you want to. I mean, hey, how much do you have? Do you want to put $1,000 to work? $5 grand, 10 grand, 100 grand? You can do that in modern booster boxes. You may not be able to do that in some of these older slabs or older boxes because they're just not available. And so that's another thing I really like about it, is you're able to scale up your positions the more you grow. Which allows you to scale up your hobby. And so that's it, guys. That's my whole story. That's what I've went through. That's all my experiences. That's why I've got to where I am today and why I have the beliefs I do today. They're based on my own experiences and things I've literally been in and seen myself. And so that's why I hold the beliefs. It's not to be a contrarian. It's not to make arguments with people. It's not to be like, demonized in the hobby or just kind of play that bad guy character. I truly believe in what I'm doing, and I truly believe showing this to others helps them and they can make money in the hobby and enjoy the hobby the way I have. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you stayed for the whole thing and if it helped at all, and I'll be back here in a new one soon. I'm out.